Can we start this meeting with the roll call?
Certainly. Mayor Seaman?
Here.
Councilmember Castellano?
Here.
Councilmember Moulton?
I'm here.
Councilmember Arroyo is absent. Councilmember Bauer?
Here.
And Councilmember Burgell is absent.
Thank you very much. If you will all now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll just take it away. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Mr. City Attorney Black, do we have any report outs from closed session?
Mayor, there were no reportable actions from closed session.
Excellent. Now it is time for mayor's announcements. Before we do our proclamations and our presentations, I'll just make a little update about some of the stuff I've been working on. It's been a month of transportation. I am on the HCOG committee, and we've done a whole bunch of projects. We'll look at large infrastructure projects, and this time we approved the Humboldt County Coordinated Public Human Services Transportation Plan. There are a lot of plans that come through HCOG, but I really liked this one because after all the talk about transportation, it really ties it to the people who utilize it and making sure that they are looking at those human uses for transportation. Another thing that has been a hot topic this year, this month, is airlines. So if you haven't been paying attention, we have a lot of flights to a lot of places, or at least we will in the next few, starting in May. We'll be having flights to Burbank, Denver, Phoenix, San Francisco. So where we used to have a couple flights to San Francisco, we now can get a lot of places, and all of those people also can come into Humboldt County. So if you know anybody who is interested in being maybe an Uber driver or a Lyft driver, or somebody that might be interested in getting a position where they can pick up people from the airport, I think that's one of the big concerns, is we're going to have numbers coming in like we haven't seen in a long time, and they're going to need to get away from the airport at some point. So if you're thinking about making some extra money, you might want to think about that and help our tourists get away from the airport and back out to town so they can see all the things that they want to see. Also, we had our second traffic safety task force meeting, and in that we talked about what our priorities would be focusing on in terms of behaviors for a marketing campaign, and what people tended to come to agreement. We had small groups, and in our task force, we have engineers and public safety officials and insurance salesmen and traffic safety advocates and just neighbors. And speed continues to be the top priority. And so speed will probably be the focus of the behavioral campaign that comes out of the traffic safety task force. So I wanted to give that little update before I introduced our proclamations, which are coming up next. So the first one, I am going to invite Councilmember Bauer to read, and that is for Bike Month Humboldt.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So in recognition of Bike Month Humboldt, May 2021, whereas bicycle travel is an effective means to improve air quality, reduce traffic congestion and noise, reduce energy consumption, increase physical activity, and improve public health. And whereas bicycle commuting benefits both employees and employers through better employee health and fitness, reduced costs of commuting, parking and healthcare, and increased employee productivity. And whereas the city of Eureka has completed the Eureka Waterfront Trail, which will continue to stimulate increased bicycle and other non-motorized use in the city. And whereas the League of American Bicyclists has designated the city of Eureka as a bicycle-friendly community at the bronze level, because it exhibits a sustained commitment to cycling. And whereas the voters of the city of Eureka in November 2020 passed Measure H, which will provide increased funding for the improvement and maintenance of the city's bicycle system, or excuse me, bikeway system. And whereas the League of American Bicyclists has designated May as Bike Month nationally. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Eureka proclaims May 2021 as Bike Month Humboldt in the city, and 2, proclaims May 20 as Bike to Work Day in the city, and 3, urges all citizens to support and participate in these and other activities that contribute to the health of the community and the environment, and 4, urges businesses to provide bike parking and other provisions to support bicycle use in the city, and 5, encourages its residents and visitors to ride safely when bicycling in the city, and for motorists to be safe and respectful of cyclists sharing the roads of the city, and 6, encourages residents to ride a bicycle to meet as many of their transportation needs as possible. City, thank you.
Yay! And I do believe we have Rick Knapp here to accept this proclamation.
I am here.
There you are.
I apologize that you can't see my smiling face. Partially defeated by technology again. I never know whether it's going to show up or not show up, but I'm here. And I do appreciate Councilman Bauer reading that lengthy proclamation. And I appreciate the, well, I don't know if you've voted to accept it or not. Have you voted to accept the proclamation?
They're kind of just accepted.
Okay, so on behalf of the Bike Month Humboldt Coalition and the Humboldt Bay Bicycle Commuters Association, I would really thank the council for approving this. And I thank Pam Pell for her positive assistance in getting the proclamation prepared. Thanks again, and I hope to see a lot of you out there on your bicycles during the month of May. Go by the local bike shops, pick up one of the little bike plates you can put on the front of your bicycle to show that you are, in fact, supporting the use of a bicycle and celebrating Bike Month. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you for the very specific asks in the proclamation. That is nice. And also to let you know that during our traffic safety task force, cyclist safety comes up a lot. So a lot of what we ask is for driving behavior to include being aware of cyclists as a legitimate and sharer of the road. And we will move on to the second proclamation. Assistant City Manager Powell, have we seen Eric or Viviana yet?
I don't see them on the call, but the Old Town Rotary President, Rusty Goodliffe, is here, and I know he has been in contact with them.
Excellent. So we'll just go to the third proclamation next. So next, I would like to ask Leslie Cast. At first, I want to check and make sure, is David, yes, David Schlosser.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Schlosser.
So we are going to move on then to the National Medical Laboratory Professionals Week, which will be read by Councilmember Castellano.
Great. The City of Eureka proclamation in recognition of National Medical Laboratory Professional Week. Whereas professionals who practice in the medical laboratory are invaluable members of the patient's healthcare team, and whereas these well-educated and highly trained health professionals who draw blood, perform and evaluate medical laboratory tests to detect, diagnose, monitor treatment, and help prevent diseases save countless lives each day. And whereas their dedication to quality medical testing and exceptional patient care is demonstrated daily in thousands of laboratories And whereas laboratory medicine is an honorable profession and vital to sustaining a high standard of healthcare. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Leslie Castellano, on behalf of Mayor Susan Seaman and the City Council of the City of Eureka, do hereby proclaim the week of April 18th through 24th, 2021 to be National Medical Laboratory Professionals Week.
Would you like to say anything?
First off, I want to thank you for getting this done so quickly, because I was kind of behind in my motions here and getting it to you. And I realized, oh my God, the April 20th meeting is perfect. I gotta get this out fast.
Well, it didn't make it quite on the agenda officially, but we did get it in the packet. So
I could certainly appreciate that. And I thank Councilwoman Castellano for reading that. And it pretty much covers everything. I just want to get out there on behalf of the local chapter of CAMLT and the entire organization around the state. Thank you very much for getting this on, not so much on the agenda, but into the meeting.
Well, I will add a couple of things I was mentioning before. My husband just had a 9-hour surgery on his spine the other day. So he spent a lot of time in x-rays and MRIs. And so certainly do appreciate the work that you all are doing. In addition to that, there's healthcare pathways. And I always thought this was just a really interesting story that came out of it. Humboldt County was working on pathways for medical careers. And one that a lot of people never thought of, you think if you're going to go into medicine, you're going to be a doctor or a nurse. And imaging technician was really one that I heard a lot of young people found really compelling. Maybe they weren't interested in a full medical career, but they can get a certificate and start working in a valuable field rather quickly and serve a really important need in our community. So
there are a lot of ancillary areas, respiratory, imaging, laboratory, that nobody tends to think about, because everything, oh, the doctors do that. No, they don't do that.
That's exactly it. So I'm glad that you came here and made a point to remind us all that the medical profession is broad, and there's lots of opportunities and there's lots of needs. So
definitely lots of needs. A lot of these fields people are retiring, and there's not enough of a pipeline bringing new people in.
Absolutely. So now I'm going to say, if you want to be Uber or Lyft driver and pick up people from the airport, that's cool. If you want to go into imaging, that would be great. I wish everybody was here looking for career advice. I got all kinds of things people could be doing.
I'll keep that in mind.
Thank you so much for coming and for doing what you do.
Thank you.
And then the final one is, I am going to read, it's a little bittersweet because it is the honorary 2021 Grand Marshals of the Rhododendron Parade. Unfortunately, this is the second year that the parade's not going to be able to happen. Hopefully next year, everything will get back to normal, but I understand that, I just want to get the Rotary Club right. Is it Old Town Rotary? Okay, Old Town Rotary wanted to make sure that their Grand Marshals were honored without making them wait yet another year. So those Grand Marshals this year are Eric and Viviana Hollenbeck. And here's their proclamation. Whereas in 1973, Eric Hollenbeck founded a salvage logging company, Blue Ox, with a focus on respect for the natural habitat, and began one of the first environmentally friendly salvage logging companies servicing state parks in Humboldt County. And whereas the Hollenbecks collected antique equipment for the construction of their own Victoria-era mill with the goal of preserving the historic construction methods for future generations. And whereas in 1989, Blue Ox Millworks began hosting students in partnership with the Humboldt County Office of Education. And in 1999, this program was expanded to include full-time high school training students to become carpenters, cabinet makers, blacksmiths, and millworkers. And whereas the Old Town Rotary Club had chosen the theme of Vision of the Future Without Forgetting the Past for the 2020 Rhododendron Parade, and after postponing the parade in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, had anticipated continuing the theme in Grand Marshals in 2021. And whereas the 2021 Rhododendron Parade had to be canceled due to the ongoing pandemic, yet Old Town Rotary Club desires to honor Eric and Viviana Hollenbeck as Grand Marshals for the 2020 and 2021 parade. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Susan Seaman, on behalf of the Eureka City Council, do hereby designate the last Saturday of April as the traditional day that the Rhododendron Parade is annually held, and thank Eric and Viviana Hollenbeck for their commitment to preserving the history of craftsmanship in the city of Eureka, and designate them as the Grand Marshals for the 2020 and 2021 Rhododendron Parade. And at this time, I would like to invite the president of Old Town Rotary, Rusty Goodliffe, to accept this and maybe introduce Viviana and Eric.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd be happy to do that. And I'd just like to say that on behalf of Old Town Rotary, I'd like to thank you and the council for honoring Eric and Viviana Hollenbeck with this proclamation. You know, they are providing a unique craft and service that's known on a national and worldwide stage. But not only that, he talks about how he's training tradespeople. And really, when I think about it, I think what he's really doing is he's training community members and future productive members of our community. And he's doing that in just a really unique and admirable way. And as you said, this is a really appropriate date for this honor, because this Saturday would be the 56th annual Rhodey Parade. Instead, it's the 56th anniversary of the Rhodey Parade, which really bums us out, of course, that we aren't doing it. But this is just a great way to honor Eric and Viviana Hollenbeck for their service to the community and for our tries of having them be the Grand Marshal of the parade. I'd also like you to mark your calendars, and please join us next year. It will be April 23rd, 2022 for the 57th annual Rhodey Parade. And so I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. And yes, I'd also like to introduce now, I know Eric, at least Eric's here, I'm not sure if Viviana is, but Eric, I'd like to introduce him with the thanks of Old Town Rotary for your contributions to our community.
All right, Eric, would you like to say a few words? Oh, there you are.
Here I am. I'm sorry. I don't know how to do this thing. I'm not.
You're okay.
Okay, I'm on it here now. So thank you for this honor. Rusty, thank you to the Rotary Club. It is too bad that we didn't get to do it this year because I had practiced my king wave. I had that down. I've been spending the last 2 months. But Mayor, you neglected in your introduction to say that the mayor and her lady friends have been at the shop and done blacksmithing.
I have done blacksmithing. It is a very happy memory.
It was fun. You ladies were a kick. I think that we need to, if I can for just a minute, recognize all of the businesses in Eureka, because we, the business world, and boy, Viviana and I are just proud to be even considered to be part of that. We are so stupid, but we in the business world here are making a community out of nothing. The Redwood Curtain is up and well and alive, and we have to fend for ourselves, and we are doing it. We're doing it just great. So my hat's off to Rotary, to all the business community. Thank you, thank you for all that you're doing to make this a vibrant, vibrant community.
Thank you so much, Eric. And thank you for what you do for bringing the character and craftsmanship and the wonderful work that you do. And also training tradesmen, because if there's another job that we really can use, it's more tradesmen.
Yes.
I just thought I'd go with the theme there. So thank you all. And at this time, I would like to move on to our presentations, which they are all very exciting today. Was I going to start with you, Economic Development Manager Asbury, and then you're going to start, and then we'll do a big circle. All righty.
Yes, so good evening, Mayor and Council. We have a few different beautification efforts happening right now that are all working together. So we thought we would bring them before you simultaneously so that you're all updated. We've asked Jenna Katzos and Alana Powell to present Project Eureka and Emily Kirsch to present our wayfinding efforts. And then I'm going to give a brief update about the Eureka Street Art Festival. So Jenna and Alana, would you like to get us started?
Absolutely. Let me share my screen. We have a quick presentation for you tonight. Thank you, council members, for having us here. Super excited to be here tonight to talk to you about Project Eureka. For those of you who I haven't met yet, my name is Jenna Katzos. I am a local artist and a community organizer. And here with me tonight is Alana Powell. She wears a lot of hats, including the Eureka Visitor Center and Humboldt Made, and she is a co-organizer of Project Eureka. Let me make sure that she's on here and able to talk.
I'm on here. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor Seaman. Good to be here. So a little about Project Eureka, very community-driven, volunteer-powered beautification effort, working to improve the look and feel of our city one at a time. Our goal is to engage the community members in long-term volunteer projects that better the city as a whole. It started in 2020 and really just kind of hit the ground running, and definitely the community just came together and backed it, and it has been incredibly supportive. Our focus areas, definitely trying to create that feeling of when you're turning off of Broadway that you're going into a district that you want to stay in, a district that you want to pull off, go into Old Town, spend some time in the city was really kind of our thought process with this. And then going into the future of potentially other neighborhoods as well. But definitely focusing on the 4th and 5th streets, D through H. And fun fact, over 30,000 vehicles pass through this section of town per day. So it does just definitely give us an opportunity to shine. This is our living room. Welcome, stay a while.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the projects that we have completed so far and are scheduled to start on. We worked with Eddie Alexander and the city to hang those colorful banners on the light poles along 101. Hopefully you've had a chance to drive that and see them. They make me smile every single time. We also worked with the city to replace the worn out trash cans along that section. There were the old style single trash can, and now there are the separate receptacles for trash and recycling, which is super exciting. Scheduled for this Saturday's workday, which I will talk about again in a moment, we are going to be landscaping the privately owned green spaces throughout this area. We've been working with the property owners and the businesses, and we basically approached them and said, we would like to give you more plants. What kind of plants do you want? And can you care for them after we put them in the ground? And we've had a really great response from that. We're also going to be cleaning and painting the existing concrete planters. There are about 20 varying sized concrete planters that we have some really beautiful planting plans for. We're going to be cleaning up the painted utility boxes and the mural benches. They mostly just need a little wipe down and a little bit of love. And then we're also going to be picking up any garbage that we encounter and weeding and landscaping the tree wells. And that is part of our Adopt a Plot program, which I will be talking a little bit more about. coming up down the road, if my slides will advance. Oh, now we went too far. There we go. Once we raise more money, these are the projects that we are going to tackle next. We have plans to apply window decals to vacant storefronts. This section of town has quite a few empty storefronts, and we've been thinking about ways to spruce them up and utilize those windows for something in the meantime before a business moves into them. This is an example of some of the plans that we have. This shows the mural map that can take people on a 1 mile route around Old Town and downtown to check out some of the public art. And then it also features photographs of that public art. And these are vinyl clings that are applied to the inside of the windows. They're easily removable once a business moves in there. So Alana has been working with property owners to get that ball rolling. We are also excited to hang solar lights on the street trees, add a little bit of light and flare throughout that area, and clean and refinish the existing benches. That doesn't take a lot of money. It's just going to take a little work day to do that. And then also providing consultation for problematic storefronts and businesses who have been encountering problems and working on directing them towards city services that exist.
So we, like I said, have had a ton of support. The community is definitely excited about it. We've had over 150 volunteers sign up, which is crazy. I've hosted a lot of events. I've never had 150 plus people raise their hands. Almost 1,000 people are following us on our Instagram account. Jenna does a fabulous job on running that. And we've raised over 6,000 so far, all individual donations and business sponsorships. Currently, most of this has been spent on the last project that was completed, which were the banners. And then in-kind sponsorships for landscaping projects, we estimate around 5,000. I actually just got a call from some folks with a ton of roadies. So Jen, I need to talk to you about that. So that's coming at no cost. So all of our landscaping projects are all in kind, which is pretty remarkable. All future funds that we raise will go to those to the remaining projects that we have on the list. And then of course, Pen and Pine and Humboldt Made have donated staff time to just keep us on as organizers.
It'll go in a second. You just have to want it.
Is a virtue.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
We've had some great projects partners, Eddie Alexander with the banner design, Pen and Pine. The Eureka Chamber has really come in full force and has been sending out encouragement to businesses to support the project. Keep Eureka Beautiful has reached out as far as the tree wells, and then Box Farm, Ace Hardware, Elk River Nursery, Pearson's, Humboldt Made, of course, and the city of Eureka has been 100% supportive of this project, which we couldn't have done without the support of the city. So much appreciation to all staff.
So if folks want to get involved, there are a couple of different ways they can do that. First and foremost, we always like to mention that we will accept donations. We are funded entirely by community donations. The community has rallied around this so far and has allowed us to tackle a lot, and I am sure they will continue to do so. And then volunteering. So we are all volunteers. That's how we're making it happen. The community work day is coming up this Saturday from 10 to 1, and folks can meet at the Eureka Visitor Center. And we're going to be doing landscaping projects. So any landscaping tools, garden gloves you may have, you'll want to bring those. We also have a handful to let folks use, and please wear a mask if you do come. And then our Adopt a Plot program. So we have a great subcommittee of volunteers who have been putting together all these landscaping projects, and it's awesome to see what they've done. This Adopt a Plot program will be taking care of all of the tree wells throughout this area. So Keep Eureka Beautiful came through years back and planted all of the street trees throughout the area. And unfortunately, the tree wells now are kind of weedy and a little bit forgotten. And so the goal of this is to have someone responsible for each tree well throughout the area. And we have about 100 tree wells, and about 75 people signed up to do this. So the response has been awesome. We do have a couple optional tree wells that are a little outside of the focus area that we would love to get adopted. So if this sounds like something fun, there's still the opportunity to sign up. And I am excited to see people get creative with this, you know, not only plants, but also cute little art installations and all sorts of stuff. I think it's going to be really awesome to see the community come together with this. And we are starting this on Saturday as well. Our orientation is going to run the same time as the workday. And in a moment, we'll see the next slide.
Okay, so as far as maintenance, the Adopt a Plot program will help to spread around the work to keep everywhere looking great. All privately owned areas will be maintained by business and property owners who we've been speaking to, and we're figuring out remote watering system and volunteer staffing. We look forward to reaching out to the rescue mission. We're pricing out what that would cost us, and we'll pursue fundraising for that particularly. And then the Eureka Chamber of Commerce is interested in potentially taking this on. You know, Project Eureka is very much like, let's get the job done. So we're looking for strong partners to make sure that maintenance is followed up, because that's always the question, right? Well, it's easy to get a project completed, but what's it going to look like in 5, 6, 7 months? So we definitely have our eyes set on that and ensuring that all of this continues to beautify.
And something to mention is the folks who are adopting plots, it's a 2-year commitment that we're asking them to make. And after that, we're hoping that it's a success and we keep it going.
And the future, our plan is to complete downtown projects by fall of 2021. So this is definitely a slow rollout, makes it manageable, kind of adds to the excitement too, to see it progress. And then we're gonna assess the program and see and hope to continue to focus on different areas of the city in subsequent years. And we also hope to inspire citizens to get involved. As Jen and I were chatting earlier, you know, everyone likes to contribute their opinion and say, you should do this. So we're taking upon ourselves to say, you might want to do that too. So that's part of the project as well. And thank you for letting us share all the fun things we've been up to. And for more information, definitely go to our website. It's got a ton there. And please be sure to follow us on Instagram.
Thank you, Jenna and Alana. Emily, do you want to present about wayfinding for us?
Sure thing. All right, let me get my screen set up here.
While you're setting it up, I just want to say thank you too to Jenna and Alana. That was a really great presentation that I've waited for a long time to hear. So I'm glad we finally got you in so we can do it. And I hope everybody shows up on Saturday.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenna and Alana, for sharing, and good evening, Council and Mayor Seaman. Thanks for having me. So I'm going to update on wayfinding kiosks, again, a little bit on the light pole banners that we collaborated on with Project Eureka, and then some future projects related to wayfinding and placemaking. So when the new City of Eureka brand was launched last year, we included a concept for updating the kiosks all along downtown and in Old Town Eureka, which you can see here. This was just a mock-up. Updating these kiosks serves a couple purposes. It helps visitors driving down 101 understand that there's a ton to see and do just off of the highway. Obviously provides directional assistance for drivers and pedestrians, and it's a welcoming reflection and visual reinforcement of the city's brand. So the kiosks are located around 3 main areas, which you can see on the maps here. There's 3 on Waterfront Drive, 4 on 4th, 101 South, 6 on 5th, 101 North, and then there's 1 sort of welcome kiosk as you're coming into town on 4th and Q. So I'm not going to go through all 14 kiosks, though I think that would be super riveting, but I'll show a couple examples of kiosks in each of these areas. So this one is at Matticat Plaza. And when we were designing these, we were thinking about what's visible from a car, what panels are going to be viewed primarily by pedestrians. These lovely maps, also designed by Jenna, are on the sides of the kiosks that are viewable by pedestrians, for example. And then all of the kiosks have the Visit Eureka website at the bottom to encourage folks to go there to learn more. Here's an example where a kiosk will tie into additional city signage. This intersection where the waterfront trail diverges from the boardwalk was identified as kind of confusing to trail users, and a grant to develop signage in this area was recently awarded to the city. So the 2 kiosks at Coast Guard Plaza will reinforce this signage directing visitors either to the boardwalk or the waterfront trail. The kiosks along 101 South will all have one side that's against traffic, right? Because it's one way. So these sides will typically have maps. And then same for the side that's kind of like facing a building that you wouldn't see from a car. Depending on the direction, these kiosks are most commonly directing visitors over into Old Town, into the waterfront. Moving along to 101 North, the kiosks along this corridor on both sides of the highway. The ones on the left side will direct people down into Old Town and Waterfront, and the ones on the right will provide directions to downtown, Henderson Center, and in this kiosk's case, pointing down to F Street, the F Street Arts Corridor, galleries, Morris Graves, Eureka Theater, and shopping and dining. This is the furthest north kiosk on G and 5th. So there's signage directing visitors north to Woodley Island and Samoa. So we're looking to encourage visitors to plan longer stays in Eureka because there's so much to do. So one night just isn't enough. So to do that, we need to get visitors moving around the city into spots they might typically not visit or maybe don't realize are here. When we conducted research that used cell phone data to show us where visitors go in the city when they're visiting, we saw a ton of folks going over to Woodley Island, across the Samoa Bridge. So to keep up with this momentum, this final, for this north kiosk will tie into further directional signage at 5th and R, which will send people over that way. I'm also waiting for my slide to change. There we go. Well, most of the art for these kiosks are going to be moving into production shortly and should be installed in about 6 weeks. So just at the beginning of June. 2 of the kiosks on 5th and F and E and 5th on the north side will have 2 panels, a bit delayed, but for good reason. We're working with the Eureka Chinatown project to develop interpretive signage that will go on these 2 panels. So the Eureka Chinatown project is a collaboration of community members and the Humboldt Asian and Pacific Islanders in solidarity group, and their goal is to celebrate the history and culture of the Chinese community in Humboldt before the expulsion events of 1885 and 1906. And they're going to be doing this through community installations near the site of the original Chinatown. They're also hoping to provide educational resources. They believe that by educating our community and bringing awareness to our past, it will help us heal, grow, and move toward a more inclusive future. So they're going to be presenting all the projects they're working on to Council on May 4th, including the multiple projects that will intersect with wayfinding and placemaking efforts in the city. So I'll let them share more about that at the next council meeting. In addition to the wayfinding kiosks, we'll be updating the Welcome to Historic Eureka sign across from Community Park. And this wayfinding sign will echo the branded billboard that's just right across the street, directing visitors to turn down E and into Old Town. And then again, to further beautify this heavily traveled section of Eureka, we got to partner with Project Eureka to develop the light pole banners along 4th and 5th. So there's 40 old-fashioned light poles in this area. 12 of them have the Eureka Cultural Arts District banners. So we did not replace those, but we did add these banners on either side of the highway in the target area, as well as on the north end of town near that kiosk and billboard that we just looked at. So the banners alternate colors as you go down the road, and they're designed to be long lasting and maintain their vibrancy, even through any inclement weather. There are additional wayfinding efforts underway on the Herrick Overpass. This landscaping project will welcome visitors to Eureka. You may have seen this mock-up before. We're also developing signage to direct visitors to the new Redwood Skywalk and Sokohoya Park Zoo. And the upcoming Eureka Street Art Fest has a special emphasis on placemaking and wayfinding this year. So I know Swan will be talking about that next. So these efforts couldn't dovetail at a better time.
There is a lot of crossover right now. So Swan.
Okay, so now I'm going to give us a brief update on the Eureka Street Art Festival. Our theme for the 2021 festival is welcoming and wayfinding, and this year's festival will be held from August 7th to 14th. And we're focusing along the 101 corridor along 4th and 5th Street. We're still finalizing our walls, but this is our current lineup. So every year we try to refresh an existing piece of public art so that we're maintaining what we have, not just adding new murals. And this year, Katie Texas, also known as Councilmember Katie Moulton, will be repainting her whale mural on the corner of 5th and 8th Street. Tony Diaz will be painting a mural on a business named Mocha that is going into the building on the corner of 4th and C. A mural will be going on one of the walls of the North Coast Repertory Theater. We're still figuring out the artist for that mural. And then we're going to have a cluster of 4 murals on the corner of 4th and E. The big wall will be painted by Jenna, and it's the main wall for Ellis Art and Engineering, and here is the rendering for it. So it's going to be directing folks to Old Town and showing the different things that there's to do down there in our waterfront. And then on that middle wall there, Mur de Silva will be painting a mural that is sponsored by Epic, and the size and location of this wall makes it perfect for a photo opportunity. And then Gina Tuzzi will be painting on the back of Soulshine Arts. And then lastly, the Humboldt Asian and Pacific Islander group has offered to sponsor a mural on the back of Savage Henry, and it's going to be a celebration of local Asian history. And then our final mural will be on the side of the Humboldt County Courthouse. We've asked Blake Reagan and Lucas Thornton to work together on this project, and we're super excited to see what they come up with. We've set aside a GoFundMe account through the Ink People to help raise additional funding for this wall. And the link can be found on the Eureka Street Art Festival website or on our Instagram, or it's also on the logo right now. And then here is a current map for the festival this year. So we have 8 murals, 9 artists, and over 8,500 square feet of public art happening in August. So lots of good things are coming. And that's it.
Well, there's a lot of really great stuff happening. I love having our good news presentations up front, so we can start our meetings feeling pretty happy, and appreciate so much work that goes into these. And I know it's volunteer efforts. You know, even if somebody might get a stipend or something for doing it, that all of these jobs are massively huge. And so recognize that you do it out of love for your community. I appreciate that so much. Does anybody have any comments or anything they would like to say about all of these presentations that kind of all went together? Yep. Was that a hand raise? Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just mostly thank you everyone who's involved in this. It's, you know, it's so important and valuable to have people like you leading the way and inviting other people to kind of to join in leadership and creating beautiful images and, you know, celebrations of our community. And I just appreciate all of you. And yeah, thanks for, you know, caring for Eureka. It's really great.
Thank you. And we're not even done. We have another presentation, which is an update of also just epic excitement, but maybe a little bit different focus away from beautification, but still tourism. I see our community services director Wood just turned on her her camera. So are you going to be presenting, or are we going to have Lee Otker presenting?
Hello, Council and Mayor. We are going to start off with Gretchen Ziegler, our zoo director.
Excellent.
Gretchen?
Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us to present very briefly a brief update on the Redwood Skywalk progress. And then I want to introduce my colleague, Lee Pierre Otker. So the Redwood Skywalk is a happening, finally. It's been a long time coming, but we're almost there. What we're doing right now, and you've probably seen it in the local media, is that we're doing a little beta testing, which is our opportunity to kind of test out our graphics and our messaging and how the whole experience works and is coming together for visitors to appreciate and give us feedback. And so this is open to our zoo members and a few other folks in our community in a really restricted and controlled way, so that we kind of put our big toe in the waters of having the Redwood Skywalk open. It's a really big deal for a pretty small staff and a pretty small facility to kind of get used to how this is all going to work and how best to operate it so that it's the best experience that we can offer. And it is fantastic and it's gone great. We've just started the beta testing. That's going to go for another few weeks. And that's a reservation system. The invitations have already gone out for that. And we're learning a lot, which is the most important thing about that. That's why we wanted to do it this way. Meanwhile, we're waiting to do just another couple of things before we're able to open it to the general public. We're hoping that is very soon, and we don't know the date yet, but we should know very soon when we'll be able to announce to everybody, including you all, that we will, when we will be opening to the general public. And then a little bit later, but not too much later, we'll be doing probably a big grand opening celebration. So all of that will be coming soon. Hopefully within the next week or two, we'll know what those dates are. And so far, and meanwhile, it's just been going great. And we're so excited to have everybody come check this out. It's really cool. So that's all for me. I'll take questions later, but first I want to put it over to Lee Pierre-Otker. She is a colleague and coworker of mine. She is leading our esteemed Sequoia Park Zoo Foundation, which for those of you that might not be super familiar with how the zoo operates, of course, the city of Eureka owns and operates the zoo, but we are in partnership and have been for many years with the Sequoia Park Zoo Foundation. Lee will tell you a little bit more about that, but I just want to say that these folks, this board of directors and the staff is small but mighty and is absolutely critical to the success of the zoo and our operation and our ability to bring projects like the Redwood Skywalk forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lee.
Thanks, Gretchen. Really appreciate it. I'm wondering if I can share my screen. Can I have the ability to do that? I don't know if that's Pam or who is in control behind the curtain.
That would be, yes, Pam. And can you share screen yet?
I'm going to try.
There you go. You got it.
Can we see it?
Yep.
Terrific. Okay. So I'm a very visual person, and I just wanted to share visually for folks kind of what we've done since 2004. And is that working okay? Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is actually, we decided during our end of the year appeal at the end of 2020 that the best thing we could do to show our donors, what we've accomplished over the years was just to do a timeline. And I think it really demonstrated the work this foundation has done. I'm just gonna do this really quick. We are basically the support organization for, I'm gonna stop showing, there we go. We're the support organization for the zoo. We're a 501c3, which means we're a nonprofit. Like a lot of zoos and aquariums, we have a similar structure. It's a support structure. A lot of zoos and aquariums have organizations like ours. My background really quick is I actually am a founding member of the Sequoia Park Zoo Foundation back in 2003. Never thought I would become the executive director of this organization, but here I am proudly. When we started the foundation, there was a lot of things going on and a lot of vision about what the zoo could become. And as that timeline demonstrates, a lot of work has happened in the last 15 plus years. Really proud of the work of our board of directors. We have a really amazing board of directors who are all volunteers in our community, and just a great group of people. I've been doing nonprofit philanthropy work for a really long time in this community. I think it's almost 27 plus years. I can't believe it, but a lot of good work is happening in our community, and I think the zoo is a big part of that. It's just pretty amazing how our little zoo is becoming a gem of this community. I do have a very, very tiny but mighty staff, as Gretchen said. I have a director of marketing events, Ashley Mobley, and she's fantastic and amazing, and I'm so lucky to have her on board. We have a part-time graphic designer, Jen McFerrin. I don't know if folks know Jen, she's fantastic. And we have a little bit of support staff in Kate Baldwin, who also is part of our zoo education team. She's great. So we have a very tiny staff doing a lot of work right now. Our main focus at the foundation is to do the fundraising, marketing, and events. And some of the things that have happened over the last 3 years since I've been in this position is we have revamped the entire website. So folks go to our website now. It's been a work in progress, a labor of love, but we're doing a really great job in demonstrating what a great place Sequoia Park Zoo is in that website. The growth of our social media presence over the last 3 years has been exponential. We have a huge following on all the major social media channels. It's been a huge effort and it's really paying off. We also, the main focus of what we do is steward our donors and also support our members. So we have a partnership with the city of Eureka around membership. I'm sure folks know that with the closure of the zoo, it really, really hurt our membership revenue. And a lot of people unsure about what was happening, didn't renew their memberships, but we're coming back really, really strong. Helps to be able to have beta testing that members can come experience. It definitely helps folks to think, maybe I should renew my membership, or maybe that lapsed membership, I really want to get up on that skywalk. So I just want to say a huge thank you to all those folks, to all our members who are coming into the zoo and giving us this feedback. You're so important to us. The great thing about our organization is we can be super nimble. It's not always the easiest thing to do when you're city government, but we can step in and do a grant or provide other kinds of support that government can't. It's a big part of what we do. Right now, we're shepherding a federal grant that's working on our butterfly conservation work, which is super fantastic work that's happening at the zoo. We're happy to do those kinds of things. We've done that in the past and written a lot of grants that have supported all the projects that currently live at the zoo. I will say proudly too that Ashley and I serve on the Association of Zoos and Aquariums different committees. I serve on the advancement committee. Ashley serves on the marketing committee, so that our tiny zoo is represented at a national level. We also just participated, I think for the first time, Gretchen, in the AZA Advocacy Day. And so I was with a whole host of other California zoos and aquariums doing a presentation to both Feinstein and Padilla staff. And then we also were able to have a personal meeting with a staff member of Congressman Huffman's. That's super great. It's always good for us to be right in the center of what they're thinking about our area on both a national and local level. So super happy to do that. So we really like being connected to AZA in that way and representing our rural community, which has always been, for me, a personal mission. I just want to just tell you about how we pivoted during the pandemic. So certainly we couldn't do a virtual, a Zootini on ground. So we did a virtual Zootini. We were one of the first nonprofits in the community to actually do a virtual event. Here I thought it would be, oh, this will be super easy. It'll be so much easier than doing something on grounds. No, it was just a different kind of hard, really. It just wasn't as easy. It was just different, but we did it and we were successful, and we were happy to help other nonprofits in our community figure out how to do virtual events. I don't know if that will be the norm. I hope not. Maybe there'll be a hybrid, but that helped us out a lot. And I thank those folks who supported us. We focused a lot on zoo exclusive opportunities like feeding pandas and breakfast with the beasts, and people were very supportive. One thing we also did during the pandemic that I want to share is we knew that communication was key. Even if the zoo was closed, we wanted to communicate with our donors and members. So we started doing a weekly e-newsletter versus a monthly e-newsletter, and we're still doing that. And we have grown our presence. in that e-newsletter, and a lot of support there. And we're just going to keep continuing to work with people and have that as a medium for communication. And then right now, I just want to say too that we're supporting the city with this reservation platform. I think everyone knew that at first when we reopened, the state was requiring us to make sure that we were limiting our attendance. And so we stepped in to help the city and created a reservation system using our own donor platform. And we're also doing the same thing again for our beta testing of members. And it's been a little bit of a lift, but it connects us to people in a good way. And we're happy to support the city doing that work. So that's a little bit about what we do. I want to thank Donna for allowing us to come and speak to council and members of the community. I know our role is vital to making sure the zoo succeeds, and thank our donors all the time for all the support they give us. And there's a lot of big things happening at our little zoo right now.
Right on, thank you. And I also, so Gretchen, thank you. You're not on my page anymore, and Donna, and to all of your staff and the great things you do. Does anybody have anything they want to ask or say to anybody from this presentation? Lee or Gretchen? All right. Thank you. So, I mean, everybody is looking forward to getting up there on that walk. So I'm sure you're going to be seeing many, many people at the zoo.
Can I mention one more thing, Susan? Sorry. I also want to do a big thank you to Bear River. I know people are really jazzed about the Redwood Skywalk, but we also are going to open up a bear and coyote exhibit next year, thanks to Bear River, which is the biggest gift the zoo's ever received, and it's really phenomenal. So we also have more great things coming. So I just want to mention that.
That is excellent. And you mentioned AZA. What you didn't talk about regarding AZA is how the criteria is really tough, and it really is about animal welfare and conservation. So, so that our animals are being cared for in the best way possible. And I like to remind people of that too. So, all right. Thank you very much. And now we will move on to our public comment period. This is the time for members of the public to speak about matters that do not appear on the agenda. City Council policy is to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. So do we have any, I know we have at least one public speaker. I'm going to look up my reactions. If you know how to raise your hand, please do. And I will just call you as I see you. Okay, I have Terry Sapahan, then Jeff Reagan, and then Emily, and then Yamo. Okay, so we'll start with Terry Sapahan.
Good evening, City Council. I first want to publicly acknowledge the historic decision that was made in the city of Minneapolis this afternoon, and in the state of Minnesota, and in the country of the United States. It's giant, I think, for all of us, but I just want to point out, many of you know me, and I had law enforcement on 2 separate occasions point their weapons and their shotguns at me erroneously. 3 of those officers were on my property and on my house with my 2 teenage boys behind me as we were running to see what the sirens and all the commotion was about. And they said, "We have a report of someone breaking into Terry Sapahan's house." And I said, "I'm Terry Sapahan and I didn't report it." So I also work for a state police department, considered a career in law enforcement. I support law enforcement, but I also support training and cultural diversity and an understanding and split-second decision-making that has to come over time. That's my public comment. The reason I'm here is to support the City Council and your decision to have affordable housing in the community of Willow Creek. I want to just say that our one of our True North leaders, Dr. Benjamin Schaefer, an HSU professor and a prominent speaker in our organization, said today that as a community, we have a moral obligation to provide working people affordable housing. I would applaud the city council as taking a brave stand, but it doesn't seem to me that it's particularly brave to do the right thing. And in seeking affordable housing solutions in a community that had such a difficult turnover in housing stock last year, it just seems like to have a balanced, thriving community now and in the future, it seems like you guys did the right thing, and I just wanted to support that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Jeff Reagan, you're next. Oh, you're muted.
Thought I clicked that button, didn't quite work. Thank you, Mayor Seaman and Council, for your attention tonight. 3 minutes is not a long time to address complicated issues, so I must be very direct. I'm concerned that you're trying to use unrelated actions of the Planning Commission to justify your actions in improving so quickly Link's proposal to build multifamily buildings over city-owned parking lots. In a Time Standard article on Friday, April 16th, Mayor Seaman was quoted making a statement very similar to statements made to me recently by Council members Burgell and Castellano and City Manager Slattery. The article quoted you, Mayor Seaman, as stating, the zoning code set the parameters for those developments approved by the Planning Commission through the zoning code update. The housing element and regional housing needs assessment, which was approved by the Planning Commission, went into detail about these projects, including identifying these properties. Based on Planning Commission agendas on the city's website, I've constructed a timeline of the events Mayor Seaman mentioned and sent them to Pam Powell to enter into the record. September 2018, the general plan was adopted by Planning Commission. March 2019, HCOG published their final RENA numbers. April 2019, zoning code adopted by the Planning Commission. November 2019 was the last amendment to Eureka's housing element. And then in December of 2019 was the workshop with City Planning and City Council and Planning Commission, where city staff first mentioned the idea of these housing projects. Every single item mentioned by Mayor Seaman was finalized before city staff even mentioned the idea of multifamily housing over city-owned parking lots, and almost a year before the details of the plan were sent to the city. As you can tell from this timeline, barring some type of time travel, the idea that the Planning Commission approved the details of these linked projects through its approval of the general plan, housing element, and zoning code is pure fantasy. It has no basis in reality. And the only mention at all of Link's projects in the Planning Commission minutes after you issued the RFP are my requests for updates from city staff. As a planning commissioner, I worked to represent the people of the city of Eureka under the authority of the City Council. You are the ultimate elected officials for the city. You don't need the Planning Commission's approval to act on anything. I respect that. But having acted on your own, it is required of you to be truthful about your role. To use unrelated actions of the Planning Commission to justify your approval of these specific plans is dishonest and fraudulent. It tells the public that I and other commissioners supported and approved the details of plans that we didn't even know about. It undermines our integrity as a board and as individuals. There's a good book that says, a good name is more desirable than great riches. To be respected is better than silver or gold. As City Manager Slattery observed in a different news article on Saturday, my personal integrity is a hill I choose to die on. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Next, Emily, and I don't have a last name.
Hi, my name's Emily. I'm going to speak about the EPD bigotry, misogyny, racism, blatant disregard for the public. But before I get to that, I would like to address Mayor Seaman, your promotion of Uber and Lyft. This was a blatant anti-worker comment, and ignorance is no excuse for you as an elected official. Uber and Lyft put forth millions to promote anti-worker legislation, Prop 22, and to promote Uber and Lyft shows your true colors and your true ignorance. Not all jobs matter. Poverty wage jobs produce more poverty. Please look into this. On to the EPD situation. I was one of the anti-war protesters that the EPD said they wanted to beat up. I am a daughter of a Vietnam vet who is Native Hawaiian and had to join the military in order to have a future for himself. So I understand the gravity of war. And that's why I was out there peacefully protesting while the EPD threatened to beat me up. Anyways, my solution to this is to not hire on more EPD, not hire on more police officers, and to redirect those funds to a program similar to Cahoots. Sorry, 1 second. In 2016, studies published by the American Journal of Medicine estimated that 20 to 50% of fatal encounters with law enforcement involved an individual with mental illness. The Cahoots model demonstrates that these fatal encounters are not inevitable. Last year, out of a total of roughly 24,000 Cahoots calls, police backup was requested in 150. The cost savings are considerable. The Cahoots program budget is about 2.1 million annually, while the combined annual budgets for the Eugene and Springfield police departments are 90 million. Let that soak in. We need a program like this. We need to help people who need help instead of putting them in cages, arresting them, putting them in handcuffs, and beating the shit out of them, and talking about them profanely in text messages.
Are you done? Was that the end?
The Cahoots model has been in the spotlight in recently as our nation.
Sorry, Emily, your time is up. Next is Yamo Alqua.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Okay. So my name is Yamo Alqua, and I'm with the Peace and Freedom Party of Humboldt County. And I just really want to encourage everyone to support Emily Smiley, the previous speaker. She has a petition circulating. You can find it at change.org and look up Fire the Texting Squad. It calls for the Eureka City Manager, the Eureka City Council to actually fire officers Rodrigo Reyes Sanchez and Mark Mefta, who threatened to beat up Emily and the Veterans for Peace for protesting Donald Trump's assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Please go change.org, fire the texting squad. We have about 500 signatures right now, but we're calling for the firing and then using those funds to fund a Cahoot style program, like Emily was saying. So another thing is that other officers have been fired for this Proud Boy type behavior, like in Fresno. Members of the Proud Boys that are also police officers are losing their jobs. They're being fired for being part of right-wing white nationalist organizations and for using excessive force, violence, and threatening sexual assault on unhoused women and things that the Eureka Police Department officers were doing. So we just highly want to encourage Eureka City Council, Eureka City Manager. We know you're under investigation and such, but please make the right decision to fire these people and work on these type of programs. So please, once again, go to change.org, fire the texting squad. Well, we need more signatures and we want to present them to you so you know what's up. There's about 500 people right now, but frankly, a lot of this isn't being addressed enough. And then in the future, we'd really like to see screening for this Proud Boy, ultra nationalist type person, and to do away with the counter racist mantras like Blue Lives Matter. There's no such thing as a blue life. Police are public servants, and it's a counter racist mantra to Black Lives Matter. And we would really like to see that banned from use from any departments or governments, because there's no such thing as a blue life. No humans are blue. Public service is a choice. So these are the things we're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see anybody else with their hands up. Is that all? All right, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who came and waited for public. Oh.
There is a phone number that has their hand up. I just saw it.
Oh, thank you. Can you read the phone number? I can't see it.
It is 362-0749.
All right. Go ahead.
I think they're
still
muted.
on mute if you're trying to talk. Oh, your hand is still up. So 362. Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Hi. Hi. I just wanted to say that my comments I have submitted via email to Pam Powell. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will all read them.
Thank you.
All right. Is that it? I don't see anybody else, but clearly I missed one last time. All right. Thank you all for coming, and we will move on now to our public hearing portion. Our public hearing today is a state community development block grant from the CARES Act, CDBG, CV2 and 3 grant application. And I do believe that Kristen Raymond is here for that. Go ahead.
Sorry, guys. Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. This evening, I will be presenting to you the public hearing for the CDBG CV2 and 3 application. And I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see that?
Yes, we can. It's not the slideshow. It's
okay.
Good to go.
Okay, is that better?
Uh-huh.
So, like I said, it's the CDBG Community Development Block Grant, the CARES Act. The state released 3 rounds of funding in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The city of Eureka has allocated approximately $730,000 between the COVID response packages. The city is allowed to utilize those funds on a maximum of 4 activities. The previous application the city submitted was for CDBG CV1, which we submitted in August of 2020. They had allocated approximately $157,000 for the following activities: the Utility Assistance Program and the Senior Health and Wellness. The current application, the CDBG CV2 and CV3, the application is due on May 7th. The state allocations are broken down into the following packages, which brings the 2 and 3 allocations to approximately $572,000. With these funds, the city plans to assist the following activities. We would like to increase our utility assistance program, increase our senior health and wellness. We would like to also fund the Uplift Homeless Service Program and the services for the Uplift program. And from here, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Davis, who will be giving a little more detail on the next 2, or on these 2 activities.
Thanks, Kristen. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to give a brief description of this project. So the proposed Uplift Homeless Services Center project centers on a community facility that provides public services to respond to the impacts of COVID-19. This service center is a place where community members experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness can access services, resources, and tools to help stabilize and improve their lives. Staffed with knowledgeable service providers and case managers, this service center will offer meaningful and flexible assistance to community members as they work towards overcoming barriers to housing and stability. The entire community has been affected by the COVID-19 outbreak, and many local services and resources have been reduced, suspended, and terminated. The Uplift Homeless Services Center will provide multiple services, including employment and educational opportunities, job development, life skills training, financial budgeting, resource enrollment, computer access, telephone and internet access, income and benefit assistance, and access to help securing and searching for housing. This center also connects and refers clients to partnering medical and mental health services, substance abuse services, legal services, housing services, and additional wraparound services. Uplift Eureka has established numerous community partnerships that span the entire county and currently operates employment readiness, job placement, outreach, and rapid rehousing programs. This Uplift Services Center, the Homeless Services Center, will bring together multiple service providers to work in a coordinated and integrated way. And it also will provide the capacity for new partnerships that will complement this existing provider network. The Uplift Homeless Services Center will utilize this county-wide partnership network to support positive community outcomes. The community facility is where community members experiencing homelessness can go to access resources and supportive services all in one place. And if we look at the two different activities, activity 3, the actual service center is mainly infrastructure improvements and renovations in order to have this service center be open to the public. There's a lot of ADA compliance that need railing and ramps and doorways and restrooms that need improvements and renovation to be compliant. And it also includes renovating certain other areas of the municipal auditorium on E Street and then on 11th Street, including a instructional kitchen remodel. The for the services that's mainly for operational expenses and then personnel costs for these public services. So it'll staff the resource center coordinator, a lot of some job development coordinators. And this is a place where we're going to be able to continue the job skills training program and really not just continue that program, but expand this program to offer kind of the next level of assistance in this culinary program. It's going to offer not just a way or a place for folks to gain their safe serve, either their handling or their manager's certification, but it's a place where folks can learn, the food handling, cross-contaminations, but also different techniques using culinary techniques, and then creating menus, front of house service, back of the house service, pretty much overall encompassing program here for folks. We are having a Pathway to Payday coming up here pretty soon, and while it's actually May 10th, and while reaching out to different businesses, one thing that kept coming back is the need for local a local culinary program to prepare folks for being chefs and cooks. There's many businesses here in town locally are looking for cooks right now that a lot of the applicants don't have the necessary training and aren't ready to go. And it's really stifling the reopening of some of these local restaurants. When we speak to a lot of our participants in the area, they've told staff that the culinary program is one of there's a lot of interest in this program. And so it's just one piece of this large homeless services center. And with that, I'll turn it back to Kristen, and I'm definitely available for questions.
So we'll hold the questions for the end of the presentation. So I'm sure you have noticed the amounts listed here and the amounts listed on the previous slide. Oh, come on. Don't really match up. Well, that's because Our friends over at the City of Fortuna have decided to partner with the City of Eureka and the City of Arcata. Fortuna was allocated approximately $412,000 and is not able to utilize these funds. So they decided they wanted to try to keep those funds local and cover as much area as possible. So thank you to our great neighbors. They have decided to split the allocation in half and give the City of Arcata half and the City of Eureka half, with the focus a focus on homelessness in our areas. I do want to note that we do need to make a couple changes to the resolution. So the original resolution was submitted on the top portion, and the corrected resolution is on the bottom portion of the screen. We'll be making those changes. I do apologize for that error. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
If you close your screen, then I'll be able to see if anybody has questions. Let me see. Does anybody have questions right now? All right, it looks like we're good. So I'll open up the public hearing and ask, is there anybody in the audience who would like to make a comment on this item? I don't see any hands. Hearing no public comment, I will bring it back for comments or a motion. And I'm gonna need a motion, so you can't be totally quiet. Thank you, Councilmember Bauer.
Well, do I need to see, can I use the motion in the agenda, or should I use the corrected motion?
Yeah, Kristen, do you want to put the motion, the renewed one up there? Do we need to say it the way you wrote it?
You can say staff recommendation with staff recommended changes if you would like.
So I motion to let me just pull it up. Are you pulling it up? Yeah. Oh, thank you. I just want to say I'm really supportive of all the activities, and I appreciate the City of Fortuna helping us out and you know, giving us that money. Let me get the pictures out of the way here. Oh, there we go. I motion that the City Council, well, let me see here. Motion that we approve the submission to the State of California of one or more applications in the aggregate amount not to exceed of $572,364 for the following CDBG activities pursuant to the CDBG -CV2 and 3 NOFA. I guess should I read off the list of activities and amounts?
That's not necessary. If you could just say, I recommend to adopt a resolution at the beginning of that, and then we'll be good.
I recommend to adopt the resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I tried, my hand is up. I've been making motions and I'm sorry I couldn't unmute, but I did have one comment and I.
You know what? Can I let Maggie make the comment? Well, can we just put a hold on the motion so we could have public comment on the hearing?
I'm sorry. I tried. It's been up there. I tried and I apologize. I think this is wonderful that you're looking at Uplift Eureka. I think it's a great program and Jeff does a tremendous job and there's so much need out there. And we see, you know, we have our offices at Area 1 Agency and we're downtown and we see more people out on the street. We see more people sleeping on our property and people are in need. And I guess one of the things I just wanted to mention, and this ties to the whole, you know, if you're homeless, it means you don't have a home. And that is, it ties to housing. So much of this ties to housing. I also serve on the Housing Advisory Board for the city. And the city's doing a lot of great things around housing and working really hard to try to meet the state requirements. But I'm hoping, Jeff, when when you're looking at what you're doing for the folks there, that there is a lot of work to help them with housing, because until you're housed, you can't do anything. You can't think straight. You can't get a job. You can't do so many things that you need to do. And it's so sad to see some of the people I talk to who are living on the street and they're stuck. You know, some are, maybe they have mental health issues, but I'm looking at some of the people who are just simply stuck in this kind of revolving downward spiral that comes from lack of housing. And I also want to really encourage you to think about, we do have a program that is called Humboldt North Coast Home Share, that we are strongly encouraging older adults or anybody who has housing right now, who they are not going to leave because we don't have better housing for them. They live in a family home that they raise their kids in. They have extra bedrooms. They're not going to move. There's no place for them to go right now other than out of the area. So they have rooms. They have rooms in their homes and they could house people. So please encourage people you know who are sitting in a home that is not going on the market in our really tight market here. They're not going on the market because these folks are afraid to move and they don't know where they can go. Encourage your friends in that situation to think about renting a room out, and we can help them with that process. We can do background checks. We can help them with all those different pieces to help them feel a little safer in doing this. And then we can match the people who are struggling with the people who have the space. And it's just one tiny piece of the housing solution. It's certainly not the housing solution, but this is a problem with lots of different elements and pieces that we have to work at. So I just really strongly encourage all of you to think about the North Coast Home Share, and thank you for letting me talk late. And thank you, Jeff, for the work you guys are doing there. It's really important work, and we're really, really happy that you're doing it. And I'm glad this money's there for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm glad we were able to let you in too. I don't want to miss people who want to say something about a topic, but I will bring it back. I don't know if anybody has any additional thoughts now that we've heard public comment. But I'd like to keep the motion and the second on, and then we'll just bring the comments in during discussion unless anybody would like to change the motion. Are you still good with the motion? Oh,
I didn't capture the second, the person who made the second.
I believe that was Councilmember Moulton jumped in with hands. Second!
I'm excited about this one.
So now we'll have discussion if we have any, and if not, we can have a roll call vote.
Alrighty, Councilmember Castellano.
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton.
Yes.
Councilmember Arroyo is absent. Councilmember Bauer.
Aye.
Councilmember Burgell is absent. 3 yes votes. Councilmember Burgell and Arroyo absent. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And now we will move on to the consent calendar. Do we have anybody that wanted to pull anything from the consent calendar? All right, seeing none, would somebody like Councilmember Castellano?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
All right, do I have a second? All right, Councilmember Bauer, can we get a roll call vote on that, please?
Councilmember Castellano.
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton.
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer.
Aye.
3 yes votes. Councilmember Arroyo and Burgell absent. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Then we will move on to item C1, ordinances and resolutions. This is our animal ordinance, our second presentation, but our second or third or fourth. So I see Captain Stevens is here, and will you be presenting? Oh, there you're both there. Good.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Last meeting, you guys had a couple of recommendations for some language that you wanted added to the ordinance before we brought it back today. So that language was added. We changed the vaccine section to include cats. So it's not dog vaccine, it's just vaccines. And in the narrative, it talks about cats and dogs. And also in each of the fancier license sections, we added the verbiage about the nothing in this section is meant to be construed to supersede the Fourth Amendment or state law regarding search and seizure. So we put that in there that the ability to search or conduct inspections associated with the fancier's license does not violate the Fourth Amendment, and we have no intention of violating the Fourth Amendment when we do so.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from council on this item? All right.
Mayor, can I add one more thing, please?
Yes, sir. What?
Can I add one more thing, please?
Of course.
We would like to slowly integrate the fancier's licenses with the intention of having them fully implemented by January of 2022. We believe with the pandemic and the new change and everybody trying to get used to it, along with some work we need to do behind the scenes with Lane to make sure that finance is on board and the forms are all properly done, that would be just a better start date to be up and be enforceable by that date. If the council would be appreciative of that.
All right. It looks like by consensus, people are cool with that. So
we would just need that added to the motion for a start date for the fancier's license to be January 1st of 2022.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody in the audience who wishes to speak on this item?
I've double checked and I don't see any visual hands or virtual hands.
All right, so this is a last chance if you're there and you're trying desperately to raise a hand and you can't figure it out, say I'm here or unmute and say you want to speak. And if not, all right, I will bring it back to council for a motion or comments. Councilmember Castellano.
Thank you again for all of your work on this. I just appreciate the time you took and the amount of engagement you had with the public and how diligently you answered everyone's emails. It was much appreciated, I think, by me, but also I think by the public who really felt like their concerns were heard and addressed. And that being said, I would like to move to waive the full reading, read by title only, and adopt bill number 995-CS, an ordinance of the city of Eureka repealing and replacing chapter 91 animals with a start date of January 2022 for the fancier's license, or the fancier's permit.
All righty, do I have a second on that?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Bauer. Any discussion on the item? Seeing none, I will ask for a roll call vote.
All right. Councilmember Castellano?
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton?
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer?
Aye.
3 yes votes. Councilmember Arroyo and Burgell absent. Motion carries.
Excellent. So our next items, we're going to have some reports, and I'm going to ask Director Millar, if we should take a break before your reports, if it's going to be, I would like to not split them up because I think we're going to sit down and have two things. So should we take a little 5 minutes and then come back, or do you think we should just power through?
I think it's okay to take 5 minutes right now. I don't think the second item will be a long report, but the first one has the potential. So.
Yeah, it's some pretty heady stuff. So let everybody sort of, stretch a little bit and come back. Is 5 minutes okay? We don't have much after that. So just enough time to get a drink in. All right, I'll see you guys back at 7:40. Thanks. Funds or bonds are, they're so important and not necessarily intuitive, and they take a little bit of extra mind focus. So I think it probably helped that we all got to stretch a little bit, and now we are ready to go. So I will bring up Director Millar, who will talk about pension funding analysis.
Okay, well, good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. I'm going to share my screen real quick. So tonight's report is focused on pension obligation bonds, or POBs. This is a follow-up from last council meeting's report. Last time we went over the city's unfunded pension liability. We talked about CalPERS basics, you know, what types of plans the city has and costs associated with each plan. We talked about funding strategies to pay down the unfunded liability. And then we talked about next steps. Just to review those funding strategies, this included a Section 115 trust, alternative amortization schedules or shorter payback periods, and then pension obligation bonds. So tonight, we are going to focus in on POBs and hopefully learn a little more about them. You know, last week or 2 weeks ago, I also talked about next steps, and that included working with an advisor and having that advisor help us evaluate the different options. So we are working with PFM Financial Management, and I am excited to introduce you to Sarah Hollenbeck and her team, which includes Nick Jones and Eric Heidel. And I will stop sharing and hand it over to Sarah.
Great. Thank you so much, Lane, and good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I'm Sarah Hollenbeck. Again, as Lane said, with PFM Financial Advisors. Before I go too far, just checking to see if you can hear me okay. Okay, great. Well, just to give you a moment on PFM, we've had the privilege of working with the city of Eureka since before I joined the firm in 2001 on a multitude of financings over the years, primarily in the area of water and wastewater, but with some other types of financings, most recently your redevelopment successor agency refinancing in 2017. Prior to joining PFM, I actually worked on your side of the table at the city and county of San Francisco as an issuer of debt for 5 years. And so it's a privilege to be here with you this evening and appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about what the mayor rightly said is a somewhat complex topic. So hopefully we'll try to break it down in a way that's understandable. I'm very happy to stop and answer questions along the way, or if you prefer to hold them till the end, that's fine as well. So I'm going to, while I'm okay with complicated concepts like POVs, I'm not great at Zoom. So let me see if I can screen share successfully. And I think that should be right, except that it looks like it's a little odd. Can you guys see that okay, or do I need to change the view to, we're okay? Or shall I?
Looks okay, yeah.
Okay, great. So as Lane mentioned, he has talked with you at the last meeting about, you know, what is the nature of the problem. Broadly speaking, you know, unfunded liabilities, as you've heard, are driving up pension costs for not only cities, but counties and special districts throughout California and the United States for that matter. Given those participants in CalPERS, generally speaking, the profile of their liability is growing over the next 10 years, in some cases fairly significantly. And that's causing funds to be diverted away from other uses. And so that is what we're trying to figure out an efficient way of addressing. Alternatives are some things you've already done. You have, I think, been consistently paying down your UAL. You have passed a revenue measure to help with this and other needs of the part of the city. Through PEPRA, benefit costs for new hires are being managed. And so then you're left with, what do we do with this unfunded liability that we already have on the books? And one of the options, as Lane mentioned, is the issuance of pension obligation bonds. So what are these? They're taxable bonds, which is unusual for local governments to issue taxable bonds, but we'll talk in a moment about why that is. They're issued to essentially refinance the obligation that you presently have to CalPERS, which is about $61 million, and instead borrow money from the capital markets to pay down that liability for which you are currently being charged the actuarial earnings rate, or it's accruing, I should say, at the actuarial earnings rate, otherwise known as CalPERS' discount rate of 7%. And going out to the public capital markets, you can, at the current time, borrow money at a lower rate of interest than that 7%, and therefore reduce the annual payment you need to make to pay down that liability or to service the debt that you have issued to do so. There are savings between, the, let's call it 3.25%, as is shown on the slide, as an estimated borrowing cost, and the 7% that's being paid to CalPERS. So that's the general concept behind the issuance of a POB and why you would do it. There are, however, some dynamics that make a pension obligation bond a different type of instrument from, for example, some of the fixed rate bond refinancings like we did in 2017 for your successor agency debt. Because the money is deposited into CalPERS, and then there is reinvestment performance you have to take into account, you really don't know how did you do, what did this strategy benefit you until the end of the term of the bonds. We'll get into that a little bit more. But generally speaking, how does it work? Oh, excuse me. How does it work? Well, as I said, right now, the box on the left, you are paying both your normal cost, which Lane described at your last meeting, and going through sort of the current workings of the pension liability and costs that you have. You have the normal cost, and that will stay the same. And then you have the unfunded liability portion of your annual pension cost, which you're currently paying to CalPERS. After the pension obligation bonds, if any, are issued, you have the normal cost that remains, and that continues to be paid annually to CalPERS. And then instead of the UAL pay down component, you are paying debt service on the POBs to bondholders. This strategy is being used very widely in California at the present time. What we've shown here is an estimate of, excuse me, not an estimate, a list of the pension financings. And this is actually only a selected list, but it's a large enough list that we thought it was interesting to see that just between the beginning of 2020 and the middle of March, over 25 pension obligation bonds have been issued just in California, totaling over $3.95 billion in par value, or principal amount issued. And we know that many more are currently in progress. We are currently working on 3 others in California. We have previously worked on pension obligation bonds for the cities of Fairfield, Santa Rosa, excuse me, and San Leandro. We're working on a large one in a Southern California city, as well as a few special districts. So this is a tool that is being widely used and has therefore become both more widely discussed in the press, but I think also more widely understood by, importantly, rating agencies, and we'll talk about what their role is, as well as investors. So on any bond issuance, there are a number of specialized parties, and this goes a bit to the item that comes next on your agenda this evening in terms of assembling your financing team, or a team to explore a potential financing, maybe is a better way to put it. So yourselves, the issuer, you're in the middle. The yellow circles are parties that are involved in every bond issuance. So there is bond counsel and tax counsel who advises you and drafts the legal documents. There's an underwriter, or in some cases, if it's a competitive sale, there's still an underwriter, but you don't hire them. They purchase your bonds through a competitive process. They have their counsel. You'll have a financial advisor, which is also called a municipal advisor. That's who we are. You'll have a trustee who holds the funds, receives payment from you and distributes that to the holders of the bonds. And then they have their own legal counsel. So you'll see a theme here, lots of lawyers. No offense to the city attorney, but there always are lots of lawyers in these, because you'll see a very large stack of documents, as you've seen on prior issuances, if you were to move forward. And then these blue boxes, circles, are other participants who may or may not be involved in a particular bond financing. In the case of a POB, you would have a rating agency, and you might or might not have a credit enhancer, which is otherwise known as in this case, a bond insurer. And then the others wouldn't pertain in this case. So if you were to proceed with a POB financing, it is a process that is more lengthy than a standard bond financing. And that's because of a particular step that is required to legally validate the issuance of the bonds. So it's about a 5 to 6 month process, and in part that depends on the courts and how long it takes for them to do their component of this. But the key steps, sort of in order, are assembling your financing team, drafting legal documents that would come to you for approval. And the key legal documents at that stage are a bond indenture and a validation complaint, and that pertains to this validation process that I mentioned, which I'm sure the city attorney could speak more to that if there are questions on that specifically. You then initiate the validation process, and that takes somewhere between, I think, 60 and 90 days. You, in the meantime, prepare a disclosure document. So that's sort of like a prospectus. We call it in municipal finance an official statement. Again, that also comes back to the council for approval. You would go to one or more bond rating agencies, or credit rating agencies, I should say. Typically, that rating agency in the context of pension obligation bonds is Standard & Poor's. And then once you receive the rating, you can issue that prospectus or post your official statement, and then hold a sale, the public offering of the bonds, and then receive the funds and deposit them with CalPERS. So as you'll see, there are not only April 6th meeting to discuss kind of generally the concepts around your pensions and how pensions work and your obligations. We're here tonight to give you a little bit more information about the POB option. And then if the city were to choose to move forward with this, there would be no fewer than 2 more visits, to you to approve documents associated with the financing. And so hopefully this takes what's a very complicated process and a complicated even concept, and allows you many opportunities to have it kind of sink in and hopefully start to make some sense, at least conceptually. It doesn't mean you have to want to do it, but at least to understand some of the pros and cons and trade-offs and considerations associated with it before being asked to approve things, and plenty of opportunity for questions and also a public conversation around this. So moving on to factors to consider, there are many. As I said, a pension obligation bond is a refinancing of an obligation that you already have, and that's how you're able to, what you're validating through that legal validation process. But it is not as simple as taking 7% bonds and refinancing with 3.5%, interest rate bonds. It kind of looks like that on the surface, but there are more things going on and more moving pieces in this type of a financing. So one thing that's very important, we think, for everyone to understand as they consider this is that if you do choose to go forward with a POB and you deposit the monies into CalPERS to pay down your full UAL, it doesn't necessarily stay at zero into the future. So we'll get into a little bit of why that is, but primarily the reasons for that are CalPERS may or may not meet its discount rate every year. So its investment performance may or may not be 7% each year. Generally isn't every year. You know, it generally, well, one hopes that it averages to that over time, but it is going to vary based on market performance. It also varies based on experience. Periodically, they'll review their assumptions, and they'll, I think annually in the actuarial reports, they review their experience. Are people living longer than they assumed? Are they not? And other factors that change what the actuarial computations are. And we'll show you some of how you got to where you are today in a later slide. You do not have to fund 100%, and I think this question may have come up at the last meeting. You do not have to fund 100% of your UAL through a POB. If you choose to do a lesser amount, 80, 90%, that's an option. There, we can analyze what the estimated savings look like in one or more of those scenarios. Issuing POBs does change the character of the obligation by replacing, you'll hear this a lot in kind of in discussion of this in the public and in the press, that pension obligation bonds change a soft debt, which is that obligation you currently have to CalPERS, with hard debt, which is a bond indebtedness, which has a fixed repayment schedule. And it is true that if CalPERS overperforms its discount rate, your UAL could go up, could go down. Conversely, if they underperform that target rate, your UAL would go up. That's also smoothed in over time. So it's, but it is not, as I said, it's not a fixed liability. Interestingly, in bankruptcy cases, such as Vallejo's bankruptcy in 2008, and Stockton as well, the courts have treated the pension payments more as a fixed obligation than those of than those to bondholders, and they actually, bondholders received fewer pennies on the dollar in those instances. So that's just an interesting aside. But it's, the other considerations relate to credit ratings. I think there's been a perception until recently that credit ratings were negatively impacted by the issuance of pension obligation bonds. I think with this more recent wave of pension obligation bonds in the last 18 months or so, people are using them in ways that the rating agencies consider to be more responsible and as a part of a comprehensive strategy to address their pension costs and their unfunded liabilities. So they're not really considered credit positive or negative on their face. It's neutral. It can be neutral. It can be positive. It can be negative if they're used to take a liability and backload the repayment of it, to extend the amortization of that liability, to take upfront savings to address a financial period of financial strain, budget shortfalls, and things like that. So as a tool on their own, they're sort of neither here nor there from the rating agency perspective. I think that's important to understand. So I'll pause there before we get into our analytics and just ask if there are questions on this portion.
I don't see any. I'm missing.
I have a little question. Sorry, thank you.
No, that's good. I was going to open up my screen because I only see so many people, so I was looking for you.
I was just wondering if I'm understanding it correctly. There's some uncertainty in the CalPERS, how CalPERS performs. But I mean, that's the same with or without pension obligation bonds. am I correct? So does that uncertainty grow with pension obligation bonds, or does it basically remain the same?
You're absolutely right that you already are exposed to CalPERS's performance. So if they underperform their benchmark, you know, that will be added as a base on your existing UAL. And we can talk about this a little bit later. Well, we'll talk about it now because we haven't shown the specific analysis of this, but we will talk in a moment about a model that we have that will help quantify this. But I would say conceptually that yes, it is a risk you already have, but the more money you have in the fund, if they have underperformance, you can end up with a worse outcome by having deposited all at one time a large sum. However, we have the ability to model the probability of certain outcomes, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a subsequent slide. So we would be able to give you some information about that risk and how we see the risk based on the simulation of thousands of scenarios of potential future investment performance based on CalPERS's history. So it's not a guarantee, but it would give you some idea of how to think about that risk.
Thank you.
Shall we proceed? Okay. So as I mentioned, and this is consistent with what has been presented previously at the last meeting, based on your most recent CalPERS reports, the city's total unfunded liability is a bit over $61 million. And that is the aggregate of the public safety police plan and then the miscellaneous plan with CalPERS. And the city's cost to pay down that current UAL, the amortization schedules that are provided by CalPERS are depicted graphically below. So your current payment in fiscal 22 is at about $5.4 million. And then it's expected to grow up to approximately 6.2 million by fiscal 31. And then after that, it reduces, but again, that's based on today's UAL, not any future layers that may be added to that. So this is just a graph showing the shape of your current sort of payment schedule, if you will. As I mentioned before, that total liability is made up of what are called amortization bases. So your UAL represents a number of bases that reflect contract amendments, so changes in benefits offered, actuarial assumption changes, so as they've reduced their discount rate from, I think at one point it might have been 8% and it's now at 7%, changes in their actuarial methods, investment gains or losses each year, and so forth. And each base has its own amortization schedule, so in other words, its own schedule over which you'll pay it back. Some of them are positive and some of them are negative, as you will see on the next page. They drop off the schedule as they're paid off, and then each year new bases are added. So I'll show you in this slide, we have the safety police plan. And as you can see, it goes back to bases that were established in 2013, and then all the way down to the ones that were established in 2019. And the total of those is about 19.8, I'll call it $20 million. And each one of them has an annual payment associated with it. And then similarly for the miscellaneous plan, there are even more bases here with amortization periods ranging from 4 years remaining to 20 years remaining, and a total of about $41 million. So you can see some of them are added, some of them are negative, some of them are positive. Oddly enough, in this, the way these numbers are presented, and this comes straight out of the CalPERS report, negative numbers are gains and the positive numbers are losses or costs. So As we've talked about, there are various ways that you can approach funding this, and you can use them in combination. Pension obligations is one. Choosing an alternative amortization with CalPERS is another. And using a Section 115 trust, which would be a dedicated trust to fund pension contributions, is another vehicle. We've run a preliminary analysis relating to pension obligation bonds, assuming for the sake of simplicity, 100% funding of the existing UAL. So the bond issuance amount comes to approximately $62.8 million. It doesn't exactly match that $61 million number I mentioned, I believe, because it assumes we've used the fiscal 22 UAL projection that CalPERS provides. And I think the 61 million is probably the most recent actuarial report, or the figure at the time of the most recent report that was issued. As I mentioned, you don't have to fund 100%, but we just did it this way for simplicity's sake. This assumes the issuance of fixed rate bonds. We've used current interest rates plus an interest rate cushion because, as I said, this is a lengthy process and rates change every day. And we are assuming, for the sake of discussion tonight, but you have options in this regard as well, that savings would be structured with a uniform annual savings amount and a slight shortening of that amortization period, simply because those last couple of years out in 2045 and 46 have so little debt service, it just didn't make sense to have the bonds go out that far. So what you'll see here is that through fiscal 22 through 44, we estimate approximately $1.1 million of savings. We're assuming a true interest cost, which is a fancy way of saying kind of the effective borrowing rate, of about 3.6%. Again, that has some healthy cushion built into it because of the length of time it would be between now and when bonds could be issued. And we estimate the gross savings at just under $27 million and the present value of that at about $17.8 million. So that's our preliminary analysis associated with the pension obligation bond solution. And again, that's close to sticking with the existing amortization, just with those final 2 years dropped off the back end because it's small. An alternative would be the city shortening the amortization. CalPERS provides an estimate of what your payment would be if you were to shorten the payments amortization schedule to 15 years. And so we've reflected that here in the 15-year UAL payment schedule column. That's about $6.48 million. If you were to issue POBs with a 15-year term instead, that does further reduce the cost, just simply because instead of accruing at 7% over that 15-year period, you would be paying debt service to bondholders at about 3.45%, again, in our estimates. So you would reduce the 6.48 million of payments to CalPERS in that shortened scenario to approximately 5.19 million. And again, that generates quite robust debt service savings or cost savings, approximately 32 million gross and about 19 million net. So another tool in the toolbox is a Section 115 pension pre-funding trust. It's an irrevocable trust used to pre-fund retirement plan obligations. So once money goes in, it can only be used for the purpose of making payments to PERS. The reason you would use this tool is that you can deposit funds into it, and those funds can be invested in a manner that is more flexible than what the government code allows your general city operating funds to be invested in. So you have the ability to invest in equities and longer term bonds than what the government code would otherwise allow. The funds in a Section 115 trust do not impact your pension contribution rate or reduce your UAL until you pay them to PERS. So folks have thought in some cases about issuing bonds and putting those proceeds into a pension funding, a Section 115 trust. There's a couple of issues with that for a city. The validation, I think, kind of logic would fall down in that case, because you wouldn't be refunding the obligation that you already have. So that would be a problem. And in addition, even if that weren't an issue with regard to bond proceeds, it wouldn't, CalPERS doesn't quote unquote give you credit for funds in a pension, a Section 115 trust. So until you give them to them, they're going to continue to send you the same bill. So it is a good tool that can be used, for example, to capture the savings you might generate if you were to issue a pension obligation bond and then hold those funds, or from other funds that you have available for the purpose, and then creating a pension stabilization fund to offset future volatility in PERS costs in the future. So that's a little bit on the Section 115 trust. And as I was now going to get back to the question the Councilwoman had asked about, exposure to future performance of CalPERS, we have a model, as I mentioned, PFM has developed a model that will allow us to evaluate what we call the probability of success of a POV financing. And in the concept, in this analysis or in this context, what we mean by success is that you are financially better off with the POV than if you hadn't done it. So the asset balance in your pension fund at the end of the period, minus the payments you've made to PERS or the debt service, as the case may be, again, is the asset balance is higher with the POVs, and without it, that's what we consider, a success. We can also measure the probability of a certain amount of benefit having been achieved. So anything over $1, you're better off, but you might have a minimum target or something like that you wanted to see, well, how likely is it that will, generate $1 million of savings or some other amount of savings, and we can measure that. We can essentially give you an estimate of the probability, or our modeling of the probability that you will achieve financial benefit over the time horizon of the debt. And the way we do that, as I mentioned, is simulating thousands of iterations of future potential investment performance based on CalPERS's 30 years of history, or we look at 30 years of CalPERS's actual investment performance, and then we model what that outcome looks like to determine whether you've achieved savings compared to the status quo or not. So as I mentioned, one of the factors that rating agencies consider when looking at pension obligation bonds is really whether they're being used as part of a bigger strategy. There are certainly issuers who have used pension obligation bonds, and I mean like large state level issuers who have significant financial strain, who have used pension obligation bonds to kick the can down the road. That is clearly not a strategy that will be looked on with favor by the rating analysts. However, used in a way that is viewed as responsible, such as shortening your amortization period or leveling out that peak in your pension cost, as you remember the graphs that I showed you, the hill that you're climbing with regard to the current amortization schedule for CalPERS on the UAL. If you can level that out and give yourself more financial stability to then be able to accommodate other growth in, let's say, other costs within the city's cost structure, like labor costs or benefit costs. Other benefit costs, just ongoing benefit costs for current employees. So level debt service is a structure that they also could look favorably upon. And as I mentioned, POVs and 115 trusts can be used as tools which are complementary in a comprehensive long-term pension funding strategy. And in part, a trust could be funded by savings, or they could be otherwise retained by the city simply in a reserve fund to address future pension costs. So with that, I'm going to pause before we get to next steps and just take any questions that you may have.
Do you may have any questions right now? Councilmember Bauer.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Maybe it's something we're going to cover or we can talk about later, but let's say CalPERS changes their discount rate to 6% and it goes for 10 years. Can you, if we were to do 100%, POB, but they drop their discount rate, would you be able to analyze that and let us know? I'm just thinking about, let's say we have 1.5 million in savings, but the discount rate drops. What's our liability? Would that savings cover that? I mean, that's the kind of question.
Right. Yeah, I think we can model that. I mean, we can certainly, I think CalPERS provides in its annual reports what your UAL would be instead of 61 million, if the discount rate were immediately reduced. I mean, if they just simply went in and said, we're going to change our assumption from 7% to 6%. And I think it's in the report. I don't happen to have it at my fingertips, but we certainly know what that number looks like because they publish it. And if we wanted to look at, what if indeed they did hit 6% as an actual investment performance for the next 10 years, the model that we have would be able to evaluate that and tell you what that looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Any other questions right now? Oh wait, I can't see Councilmember Moulton. So if you're out there and you have a thing, just speak up. Alrighty. Looks like we're good.
Okay. If we're good, then we'll just go to the next steps. So what could be your next steps? I guess what we would suggest as next steps, if you're interested in moving forward to further pursue a pension obligation bond strategy, would be to build out the financing team. We have, as you know from your next item, part of the team would be appointed this evening if you so desire, if you so choose. And the underwriter, which is the other kind of key critical party in beginning the document drafting process or providing input on the documents that bond counsel would draft to be more accurate, we would proceed to solicit proposals from underwriters who are active in this space, in this part of the municipal market, and have expertise in the area of pension obligation bond financing. And we would go through a solicitation process, receive proposals, and select one or more firms to work with on the financing. And then, as I mentioned, there would be future action at a later meeting to bring back to you the indenture, which is sort of the base legal document that creates the obligation of the city to pay debt service to the bondholders on a POB, and then the various documents associated with the validation process. And as I said, that would come back to you at a subsequent meeting if you choose to move forward. So with that, I'd hand it back to Lane or anyone else to
It's not last chance for questions, but again, does anybody have any questions now that we're getting to next steps? I'm glad that we record these meetings so that our two council members who aren't here can watch this, because this obviously is a process that isn't over. So they're going to have, I think it'll be helpful for them to see this before we start talking in the future. Councilmember Castellano.
I think my biggest question, and thank you for the presentation. It did cover quite a bit, but my biggest kind of concern is obviously, there are unforeseeable financial futures, for the city of Eureka in terms of tax dollars and things like that. No, and so I think my biggest question would be around, if there's a recession or something like that, what kind of position might it put us in? Obviously there are still a lot of variables at play in terms of, if we also invest in 115 savings and things like that.
Yeah, Lane, do you want to? I'm going to stop sharing if that's okay, so people can see each other better.
Okay, so in the scenario where we go into a recession, that's bad for CalPERS because that means it's going to be harder for them to hit their discount rate. So that might catch up to us in the future. But in the meantime, because we've refinanced the debt and we pay less per year, we would actually be able to navigate the recession a little bit better than without using the bond, because it helps out with cash flow in the near term. But the problem is, if that recession was bad enough, that could potentially produce another UAL basis, and we would see costs go up in the future.
What I always like to hear is, if you had the biggest opponent to this idea, what would their argument be? Like the person who's like, this is the worst idea ever. What is it that they're saying about going this route?
Lane, do you want me to look at the GFOA slides, or should we just talk about this conceptually?
Yeah, let's. So right now, the biggest opponent is, I would say, the GFOA. They made the statement back in 2015, a much different environment than we see today in terms of interest rates. And typically, they're not so explicit, but they pretty much said that pension obligation bonds are a bad idea. But I mean, Sarah, if you want to share that slide, there are counterpoints to the GFOA's opinion.
Sure.
Yeah, I just always like to know sort of what the worst case scenario is and then work backwards. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's important to talk about this because if you've done any Googling, you're going to find, this and a variety of other articles. Because there has been so much activity, there has also been quite a bit of press around some of that activity. So, there's a lot that's been written on this topic, and much of it is critical. So the GFOA, just to start there, as Lane said, in 2015, they issued an advisory recommending against the issuance of POBs, and they cite, I think it's 5 or 6 concerns specifically. One of them is reinvestment risk. Clearly, I think when people talk about the biggest fear, or when we hear people react to this who haven't, really dug deeply into it, they say, well, I'm going to, issue these bonds and deposit the money with CalPERS, and they're going to lose it all. So I think, that seems to be the biggest fear. And, I don't know that people understand that if CalPERS has a bad year, you're going to experience that bad year regardless. But they do have smoothing, and so you're not going to feel all that pain in one year. But that really is where our model helps to evaluate what would that look like and what is the likelihood of that. So we would bring back to you at a subsequent meeting, if you choose to move forward, some of those what if scenarios to show you what are the probabilities of those outcomes, because they are very important to understand. The next issue that they raised was the use of kind of complex tools like interest rate swaps and derivatives, structured financial products of one sort or another, which do indeed come along with counterparty risk, credit risk, interest rate risk. I'm not sure that is not the current state of play in pension obligation bonds, that those tools are indeed complex and do involve those risks, but they are not being used in the POBs that are being issued these days. These would be fixed rate bonds, and they wouldn't involve any of those kind of financial products. So I think we've dealt with, so that one sort of is addressed in the way that the bonds are currently being structured, and that any bonds the city would issue would be structured. Another concern they raise is the increased debt burden and using up debt capacity that could potentially otherwise be used for something else. And they also raise the concern about the fact that these bonds were often in the past issued in a manner that could not be restructured or prepaid prior to their maturity. With GASB 68, all these pension liabilities are on your balance sheet now. They weren't, I think, in the past. So maybe that made sense in, at the time in January of 2015 that this was raised as a concern. But there's much greater transparency around this burden, and, the rating agencies themselves take it into account now. And the bonds are typically now issued with a 10-year call, just like a tax exempt water or wastewater bond or general obligation bond would be. So again, some structuring improvements have been made in the POB market to make them, I mean, there are definitely issuers I've talked to who issued POBs in the early 2000s, which were not callable, and they were structured with ascending debt service, and they do very much wish that they could restructure those now. And so I think there have been a lot of lessons learned. Deferral or extension of repayment, as I said, sometimes this tool or this strategy has been used to kick the can down the road. That's not the concept here. So shortening the amortization schedule is much more likely than extending it. So, that's something that would be a concern if that were the plan, but it's not what's being proposed. And then finally, I've already talked about the negative credit rating impact. They raised the specter of that. I just provided a quote here from Standard & Poor's from a paper that a published piece that they put out, I think last year, if not maybe 2019, which says, we consider debt, pension, and OPEB expenses to be fixed costs. Unless there's credible action to reduce pension or OPEB benefits, we treat the liabilities as hard debt that must be paid. So, if you're refinancing something they already think is going to be paid, must be paid, and it's refinanced at a lower rate of interest, as I said, they can be a benefit as opposed to a detriment.
So it's, and you said that a lot more people are doing this. It sounds like maybe because some of those things have been cleared up since 2015.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's really created the opportunity right now, and the reason there has been such a tremendous volume of issuance in this space, is simply that interest rates are so extraordinarily low. 10-year Treasury, which is sort of the basis upon which taxable municipal bonds are priced these days. I think today I was just looking at this and I've lost it. It closed today at a 158, the 10-year. So when you have a 7% rate you're measuring against, and maybe you're pricing at 200 basis points above that 10-year, but you still have a lot of cushion to work with. Now, when you were issuing pension obligation bonds, maybe in the early 2000s or the late 90s or even into the 80s, when you were issuing with only it was like a 5% bond rate and a 7%, you just didn't have a lot of room for error. So now you have a much bigger spread. And to Lane's point, any savings you capture from, a positive performance on the reinvestment side for a period of time gives you a lot of buffer to absorb future. So we are just in an extraordinary interest rate environment, which creates an opportunity here that was not as good of an opportunity previously.
That makes perfect sense to me.
And I think one of the most important things is our hand isn't being forced. I'm not looking to find $1 million to pay salaries. I think that's a big difference. And I think how this has gone wrong in the past is it hasn't been part of a comprehensive plan. So, if we decided to go down this route and we also adopted a 115, I think that is a little bit different than what they're criticizing. I don't think they're criticizing the comprehensive plan as much as the POBs and the risk of timing the POBs correctly. But again, you know, back in 2015, I don't think they assumed that rates would be this low.
Does anybody else have any questions? All right. I don't even know where we are now. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak on this item? I don't see anybody. Okay, and this is just a report we're receiving, right? Got to double check on the agenda before we move on to the next item, which has more of an action.
So there is an action involved in it.
Sorry.
Yeah, it would essentially be starting the process. And because this could be, you know, 6 months out, you know, it's in our benefit to start moving the ball forward, because we don't want to, you know, kick the can for a couple months and then have to wait 6 months. Because right now, is with rates so low, we're trying to take advantage of that. You know, we're not committing to anything aside from preparing the next step of the process.
Councilmember Castellano.
And will part of that preparation be, if I'm understanding it right, be kind of seeing like a deeper analysis of, you know, like how much do we want to invest in POBs versus like a 115 savings? Sorry, I may not be using the exact right language, you know, versus like a 115 account, or like how we want to configure those things in relationship to one another.
Yes, you know, so we plan on playing the scenario game, which is kind of identifying the different options we have, and then kind of tweaking, you know, different options, and like mixing those options together. That would at least come forward one or two more times. So.
All right. Any other comments, or does somebody want to make a motion then to authorize the city manager to prepare the draft?
I'll move.
All right.
I would like to move to follow staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Any more discussion on this item? If not, we'll take a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Castellano.
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton.
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer.
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo and Burgell are absent. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to move on to item D2, which is a bit of a continuation of this, the Bond Council and Financial Advisor Resolution. Director Millar, you're on again. Oh wait, no, is it Miles? I mean, City Manager Slattery?
Yes.
Oh, then City Manager Slattery. Are you stuck? He's having problems with something. Sorry about that. Is he going to come take your seat, Pam?
Hello, Mayor and Council. I apologize. My camera and audio have been messing with me all day. So,
we can tell that.
Yes. So this is a follow-up item to the one that Director Millar had brought forward to you guys. It's a resolution that we're asking Council to adopt and approve to assign bond counsel and a financial advisor to prepare the documents that were discussed in the previous item. And so staff recommends that Council adopt that resolution.
All right. Do we have any questions about this item right here? Councilmember Castellano.
I had sent a an email earlier, just asking a little bit more about this company, and I was informed that City Attorney Black would be able to speak to Aura Carrington and Sutcliffe LLP.
I can, and I'm happy to do that. Aura Carrington and Sutcliffe was recently rated #1 bond counsel, #1 disclosure counsel by the industry observers. They did the 2020 deal of the year, and by the way, we're talking national stature here. The 2020 deal of the year for the California Health Financing Authority. They did the Northwest America deal of the year, the Midwest America deal of the year. They do over 500, or they in 2020 did over 500 bond issuances. The city of Eureka has worked with them in the past, as recently as 2013. And one of the main advantages to hiring them is that they have prepared documents for the city of Eureka in their recent work, or their most recent work, which would be 7 years ago. And I just think they're highly rated, highly respected in terms of our ability to proceed with a validation action. They're going to be invaluable. So I recommend them. And by the way, I have worked with them in the past in other contexts for other entities, and they're just super professional. So that's why the recommendation. Relationships like this with professionals do not prevent us from using a competitive price process, but they don't require it. And it's quite common that especially attorneys, architects, engineers are retained on the basis of sole source.
Thank you very much. I was going to ask the question about the competitive bidding if that was required as well. So that was perfect. Any other questions? All right. Do we have anybody in the audience who would like to speak on this issue? I don't see any hands. Nobody's turning their camera on, so I'll bring it back for a motion or discussion. Oh, it looks like we've got our assistant city manager back to capture motions and discussions. So Councilmember Castellano.
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution of the City Council appointing Aura Carrington and Sutcliffe LLP as bond and disclosure counsel, as well as public financial manager and financial advisor to undertake proceedings for the issuance of pension obligation bonds.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any more discussion on this item? Seeing none, I will open it up to roll call vote.
Councilmember Castellano.
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton.
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer.
Aye.
3 yes votes. Councilmember Arroyo and Burgell absent. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Hollenbeck, for coming and explaining all of that to us. I'm sure we'll get to know you well over the next.
Pleasure. Thank you.
All right. And now we are going to move on to city manager reports. Do you have?
Yeah, good evening again, Mayor and Council. Just a brief report tonight. I thought this was actually going to go longer than this, and probably because we're missing 2 council members, that's the reason why. But I did have a brief council report. I wanted to acknowledge Papa and Barkley. They have had a grand opening of their facility on Broadway. Some of the council members as well as the mayor were there to see the ribbon cutting. It was well attended, and as you all know, the cannabis industry has done really well in Eureka, and you guys have approved some very progressive regulations related to that, and I think it's really a benefit to the city. And I think Papa and Barkley is perfect example of how it can benefit our community. So it was a great time, and it really demonstrates a building that was not in the best condition, and a very large investment was made into that building, and it's a big economic driver for the city. So just wanted to bring that, and that's all I have for this evening.
Excellent. I'd also like to note that Papa and Barkley says nothing but wonderful things about our staff, including the level of knowledge staff has about the industry and their willingness to work with them. So I just want to say thank you to those of you who have done such a good job building that relationship. Because were they our first cannabis license? Is that what they said today in the county? I mean, not in the county, in the city for manufacturing.
For production, I believe. I don't think they're the first overall.
Yeah, because I think we had dispensaries, but yeah, the first for manufacturing, which has been quite the cannabis. I mean, that's been a really good area for us in terms of the industry growth. So thank you very much. And now it's time for council reports, and we will start with Councilmember Bauer. Do you have any reports for us this time?
Thank you, Mayor Seaman. Yeah, you know, I got to participate in a tree planting on Cooper Gulch with the Uplift program and Pathway to Payday. And that was just a super group of people and a lot of fun to work with them and, you know, teach them a little bit about the types of plants we have here and just do some hard work with Jeff and his whole crew, which are a bunch of hardworking professionals. So really, really fun time. Look forward to doing that again. I just want to give a shout out to, I see that Dick Taylor Chocolates is starting to work on their building. Very exciting to see that old North Coast, or the old co-op building getting done. It's just been great seeing a lot of good stuff in the city. And I've been getting a lot of questions about when are we paving the streets, and so I've been communicating with a lot of people in the ward about 14th getting done and Henderson, and so there's a lot of good stuff going on in the city this summer. And now people will be upset about all the construction, but you know, it's gonna be good for the city. So yeah, I'm excited for this summer and looking forward to us all eventually, hopefully this year, getting back together in person. So I don't know if we haven't even talked about it, but hopeful that we can do it this year.
Me too. That'd be great. Councilmember Castellano.
Well, it's nice to see everybody. I've been, you know, staying busy in my counselor capacity. I did attend the, first I'm going to start with I'm helping create 2 separate community cleanups on the next 2 weekends. The first one is, and so I'm excited that the first one will overlap, I think, beautifully with the Project Eureka events that are happening, because I'm working with the Old Town Community Alliance and Synapses to do an interstellar cleanup. So kind of a space themed Earth Day cleanup on this coming Saturday, April 24th. In the morning, so come on out. It'll be from 9:30 to 11, and then in Old Town. So we're meeting at the gazebo, and I just want to thank Community Services for lending a lot of support and letting us use, you know, vests and pickers and all the things like that. And then next Saturday, I've been partnering with or really just supporting Community Services and Public Works for a Wabash cleanup on Saturday, May 1st from 9 to 12. And there's a lot of community interest in that one too. So that one is not space themed, though I will never turn away someone wearing a costume while picking up trash. And then in terms of what I've been up to, I'm on the League of California Cities Housing, Community, and Economic Development Policy Committee. So I attended that meeting last week. And then I helped out with the Keep Eureka Beautiful tree planting this past Saturday. We planted 20 trees. I also attended the Papa and Barkley grand opening. And yeah, they've just done amazing things with that facility there. It's going to be a real treat. And I think it just is going to pair really nicely with the Skywalk opening. There's all of these kind of new fun reasons for people to come to Eureka. And then I got to participate in a podcast interview for kind of a national ranked choice voting organization. So that was really interesting. They were very curious to hear about the city of Eureka's, process around ranked choice voting, how that worked, and how, so it's neat just to see Eureka kind of getting this national attention for that. I visited the Lost Foods Native Plant Sanctuary, and this week, April 17th to 24th, is Native Plant Week. So if you have a place to plant native plants, plant a native plant or 2 or 3. It's good for butterflies and insects and pollinators. Attended the HWMA board meeting, and then I've continued, I've been continuing to participate in the Community Economic Resilience Consortium meetings, where I'm heading up a housing working group, and just spending a lot of time learning about all kinds of housing and how we can support housing for, everyone from people who don't currently have homes to healthcare workers to first-time home buyers. And I've been continuing to work on broadband and attending some meetings around homelessness as well.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember Moulton.
Don't make me follow Councilmember Castellan. We have our own Leslie Knope. So I too attended the opening of Papa and Barkley and toured their facility. Spent far too long lingering, looking through the window at the chocolatier, which is my favorite part of that whole situation. I'm appreciating very much that they are aesthetically bridging the divide from across because there's a lot of focus on medicinals and the healthcare aspect and the CBD products that I hope that they're bridging this gap between the recreational users and people who still feel that there should be a stigma around cannabis, because that is only going to be beneficial for our area. And also, I'm under the impression that they're providing some really good jobs in addition to cleaning up a serious chunk of my ward. So I'm grateful for Papa and Barkley. And besides that, I'm working on, since can't travel, working on getting a really good picture still of services available for homeless and around housing. Just educating myself, really meeting with True North, meeting with AHA and some other folks, just trying to really understand what's available and where the gaps are and wrap my head around that. Besides that, I just want to encourage people to keep wearing their masks, even if you get vaccinated. If nothing else, it's a sign of solidarity. So thanks, Humboldt.
Miles is wearing his mask. Good job.
I'm in my house, or I would be.
And on that note, everybody have a great night, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.